can I ask you on a small tangent to talk about your favorite set of ideas and people, which is postmodernism?
What?
What is postmodernism? How would you define it, and why, to you, is it not a useful framework of thought?
Postmodernism is something that I'm really not an expert on. And postmodernism is a set of philosophical ideas that is difficult to lump together, that is characterized by some useful thinkers, some of them post-structuralist and so on. And I'm mostly not interested in it because I think that it's not leading me anywhere that I find particularly useful. It's mostly, I think, born out of the insight that the ontologies that we impose on the world are not literally true, and that we can often get to a different interpretation by the world by using a different ontology that is different separation of the world into interacting objects. Mm-hmm. But the idea that this makes the world a set of stories that are arbitrary, I think, is wrong. And the people that are engaging in this type of philosophy are working in an area that I largely don't find productive. There's nothing useful coming out of this. So this idea that truth is relative is not something that has in some sense informed physics or theory of relativity. And there is no feedback between those. There is no meaningful influence of this type of philosophy on the sciences or on engineering or on politics. But there is a very strong information on ideology. Because it basically has become an ideology that is justifying itself by the notion that truth is a relative concept. Mm-hmm. And it's not being used in such a way that the philosophers or sociologists that take up these ideas say, I should doubt my own ideas because maybe my separation of the world into objects is not completely valid, and I should maybe use a different one and be open to a pluralism of ideas. Mm-hmm. But it mostly exists to dismiss the ideas of other people.
It becomes a political weapon of sorts to achieve power.
Basically, there's nothing wrong, I think, with developing a philosophy around this, but to develop norms around the idea that truth is something that is completely negotiable is incompatible with the scientific project. And I think if the academia has no defense against the ideological parts of the postmodernist movement, it's doomed.
Right. You have to acknowledge the ideological part of any movement, actually, including postmodernism.
Well, the question is what an ideology is. And to me, an ideology is basically a viral memeplex that is changing your mind in such a way that reality gets warped. It gets warped in such a way that you're being cut off from the rest of human thought space. And you cannot consider things outside of the range of ideas of your own ideology as possibly true.
Right. So, I mean, there's certain properties to an ideology that make it harmful. One of them is that, like, dogmatism of just certainty, dogged certainty in that you're right, you have the truth, and nobody else.
Yeah, but what is creating the certainty? It's very interesting to look at the type of model that is being produced. Is it basically just a strong prior, and you tell people, this idea that you consider to be very true, the evidence for this is actually just much weaker than you thought, and look here at some studies. No, this is not how it works. It's usually normative, which means some thoughts are unthinkable because they would change your identity into something that is no longer acceptable. Mm-hmm. And this cuts you off from considering an alternative. And many de facto religions use this trick to lock people into a certain mode of thought. And this removes agency over your own thoughts. And it's very ugly to me. It's basically not just a process of domestication, but it's actually an intellectual castration that happens. Mm-hmm. It's an inability to think creatively and to bring forth new thoughts.